Hello friends, welcome to your first Artiszen Experience with the Artisan Kit. The first thing that you're going to want to do is open it up and pull everything out. You have a table cover there that's also going to act as a paint palette, and once you spread that out, you can lay all your tools on top of it. And there's a number of different items that you have in your package. Just as a side, I would like to let you know that part of the proceeds of all of the artisan kits goes to a local foundation named My Sister's Place. They're a part of the Canadian Mental Health Association. So some of what you're doing today goes back to a good cause. So whether you received this as a gift or got this as a gift for yourself, I hope you enjoy it. And please check out the links on the back of the instructions, because there is a link to a Spotify playlist that you can enjoy while you are making your own unique artwork. So you can see here that you have stencils, you have watercolor pencil, marker, oil pastel, a little paint pots with the primary colors red, yellow, and blue. You've got a color wheel. You have a little heart stamp, and then you have this scraper tool with some holes embedded in it. You have a little ink writer of black ink. It's actually not ink, it's acrylic paint, but fluid acrylic paint. And then you have a little pot for water that you can use to clean out your paintbrush or to make a wash for your paper. And then of course you have some mixed media paper here as well. So you have everything that you need to make your very own unique art piece. We also have a couple of mark making tools, the bubble wrap, which is great for making little circles on your page with the acrylic paint. And then you also have a sponge that you can use at any point throughout the art making, and definitely comes in handy when you are using the stencil. So the first thing you're going to want to do too is open up your little pots of paint. They are a little tough, so as you can see in this video here, you will need to use a little bit of force to pop those open, and that's really just to make sure that they don't leak or spill over when they get put in the bag and they're shipping to your home. You also have a color wheel in here, so it has the primary colors on the color wheel, which is the blue, the yellow, and the red. But on the color wheel it shows you what colors you can make with those primary colors. And the colors you can make will be that you can make, of course, with blue and yellow are the greens, and then the colors you can make with yellow and red are the oranges, and then the colors you can make with blue and red are the indigos or the purples. So just a little reminder from, because there's many times that we may not have used this in our lives, so just a nice reminder for you to reference if you need it. So now that you have everything laid out, the first thing you're going to do is grab your watercolor pencil, and you can use this dry or wet, and you can, if you're going to use it dry, just go ahead and start scribbling on the page. And if you're going to use it wet, just dip the nib into your little pot of water, which you will have already added into it that I forgot to tell you about. So I always like to use the watercolor pencils a little bit wet because I love how the pigment interacts with the paper and how it can give you a little bit of a brighter color. And you're just going to make some scribbles on the page. A lot of times I'll just do shapes, some organic shapes, and then I'll color some of those in with a little bit of a wetter nib, or I will write some words. The nice part about this part is don't worry too much about what it looks like. You're going to be following a process, so don't focus on what the end result is going to be right now, because that will come clear as you go through the process of making this painting and putting layers upon layers. The other nice thing you can do with the watercolor, once you've got the pencil down, is you can grab one of your paintbrushes and dip that into the water and then just rub that water around on the page to spread it out a little bit. And it can make a little bit of a wash. The other thing that you can do is that if you want to do that over the whole page, then you might want to put a little bit more of the watercolor pencil on and then rub that in with the wet paintbrush. If you feel at any point that you've got too much in there, or too much water on your paper, you can always grab a little piece of paper towel and dab it to pull some of that paper up, and that in itself might leave a little pattern or mark making on your page as well. But for right now, I've just moved on to making a little bit of pink. So just adding a little bit of red and the white to that right on the table covering, which what I mentioned earlier, have one side as a wax side that will prevent any water or fluids to going through onto your table surface, which is great. This is what a lot of that palette paper you find in the craft store might be made of, kind of a little bit of a wax paper. So I'm taking my mark making tool and I used it to mix up some of the paint. And then I'll lay that paint down on the page again in whatever pattern works for me, and go with whatever you feel like putting down. You can put it down on its side and make little lines like I'm doing here, or you can put it down and then scrape it along the page. I also like to use the corner of the tool to scribble into the wet paint to leave marks, and that can create a nice texture for when you are going to cover over with some other options. And in this I'll do a checkerboard pattern. I might carve some symbols into it, some hearts, maybe some Roman numerals, and you can do whatever comes naturally to you. And maybe you just want to lay the paint down, and that's okay too. This is just about experimenting and getting into a little bit of flow and seeing what kind of marks you can make on the page with the different applications. And you can do this with a couple of different colors. In the video you can see that I'm mixing a little bit of the red with the blue, and probably a little bit more red right from the pot to make an indigo or purple color. And you can do this as many times as you like. These are steps that you can repeat over and over again. So just making that little bit of more of a purple color. See what happens when you mix the colors together, and this is where you get to have a little bit of fun with experimentation. What colors can you mix together, and what do you end up making? Just adding a little bit of water there to make it a little bit more fluid. And then you can keep adding until you're satisfied with the color that you have. Or if you don't like it at all, just start over in a new spot and see what you can create. A paintbrush is another mark making tool that you can use to create lines and patterns in whatever direction you want. And again, just place it down anywhere on the paper and just move it in whatever direction feels good to you. Experiment with one side of the brush and then the other side of the brush to see what type of marks you like better. Fill in some of the areas that you like, outline some areas, create some shapes. The key is really just to play. And like I said, you can repeat any of these steps as many times as you like. The only thing I will mention is that if your paint on your paper is still wet, sometimes the addition of another color will make it a little bit muddy, or depending on the colors you're adding, because if you add, say, a red over a green and they're both still wet, that might make it a muddy color. And if you think about colors opposite each other in the color wheel will dull each other out. So if you can think about that when you are adding wet on wet and avoid it where you can, you will avoid turning your paper into, or your painting into a muddy surface. That said, you can also avoid it by drying it in between layers. I sometimes keep a little hairdryer handy, and then I dry my paint in between layers if I want to maintain that color between the two layers. So we just used the stamp here, which is the heart stamp, and you can press it into a pool of paint that you've put on your palette, or you can actually paint the stamp itself. So if you flip it over, you'll see the heart has a bit of a ridge on it, and you can paint that with the paint color that you've chosen and then press that down onto the paper. So you can see that we made a little purple heart here. And now we're going in with some lemon yellow that we just made on the palette itself. Your kit will probably have different colors than what are seen here. Each kit comes with its own unique chosen stencil, as well as a color that, usually complementary colors that mix well together. But it may be blue and orange, it may be red and green, it may be purple and yellow. In this circumstance, we have the pink and yellows, but your kit may have a completely different colors. So again, it's just about experimenting and see which colors you can make with it based on what you like. So I let my painting dry for a little bit so that the paint is a little bit drier while I pick up the acrylic marker. With the acrylic markers, you do want to make sure your paint is dry when you use it, because otherwise it will plug up your acrylic marker and you won't get much of an impact when you're trying to put the acrylic onto the page. And the marker is great for drawing shapes, for filling in any areas of the painting that you want to with the marker color. You could also pick up your scraper tool and use the holes in it as a stencil, so that you can create little blocks on your painting as well. Just another opportunity for mark making. I also like to draw words, or I love obviously putting hearts on things, X's and O's. Sometimes I might write out lyrics from a song that is especially resonating with me on a particular given day, or I might write dates that are important to me. And overall, it's just little things or hints of things that you might see at the end when the drawing and painting is completed. Then again, it won't be so recognizable that you're going to be able to read every single little detail, so you can be as subtle or as pointed as you like when it comes to this type of mark making. Here is the oil pastel being used on the paper. This one is just a pink oil pastel, and it is, if you think about oils and acrylics, oil pastel are probably the one thing that you want to put on at the end. And the reason for this is because nothing really goes over it very well. So if you try to paint over top of an oil pastel, it won't really stick to it very well. I sometimes do this and then scrape away some of the paint just to leave a unique mark on it. And it will dry, but it certainly doesn't cover it easily. And then with the oil pastel, you can leave it raw or you can rub it in. And then I've taken the scraper here and just scrape into the pastel to remove some of it. And so that'll leave some unique marks on the paper as well, which can look fun when you cover it with the stencil. Going back in with some white, where I'm going to put a couple of blobs here and there just to make a little bit more of a contrast between the brightness of the white and the other colors. Add in a couple of spots. And some places I put on a little bit thicker so I can scrape it across the page with the little scraper. And then once you have paint on the edge of your scraper, you can actually use it to make little lines as well. One of my favorite things to do is just scraping into the paint, leaving symbols or marks or words that are mostly just things that I know that are there. But it's nice, especially if you're giving something as a gift to someone, if you're creating a piece of artwork and then you're going to give this to them as the gift. Putting nice little sayings or hearts or dates that are meaningful to you in that relationship can be a really nice touch. Even if they don't know about it, you know it's there. Next thing I'm doing is getting out my black acrylic writer. So this is with the fluid paint, the color black. Now you could have used the black at any point to mix it in with any of the colors that you were making to make them a little bit darker or dull them down a little bit. This is the part I really like to do in terms of adding some lyrics to my work or adding, like I mentioned earlier, some important dates or symbols or things like that. You can draw moons, you can draw circles, you can fill in some of the holes on the stencil scraper with it. And you can decorate your paper with whatever writing or scribbles you feel like making. I should mention that it's probably a good idea to just squeeze a little bit of the acrylic out of the bottle onto your palette just to make sure it's not clumping or it doesn't come out too much, or just to get a feel of it before you put it on your paper, just to avoid making blobs, unless blobs are what you're looking for. Here I added just a couple of hearts and this is a nose, as I am known to do. You can draw little geometric patterns or shapes. You can outline some of the shapes that you have made in your drawing for painting already. And then usually I just clean off the top and then put the silicone cap back on it, just because that will preserve it for if I want to use it on my second piece, my second paper. Here I decided to go in with a little bit of pure yellow right from the paint pot, just to add a little bit more vibrancy to some of the darker areas on my painting. Plus, adding a layer of texture to it or adding a layer of paint to it will increase the texture of the painting itself, which can have a nice effect once you create your stencil outline, as you'll be putting a layer of paint over top of it, and will allow for some ridges or bumps or lines to show through in the painting. While you're adding some marks to your paper, one thing I would like to mention is that once you're finished with all of this, you can just put the caps back on the paint pots, and you can empty out your water container, and you can put everything back into your little bag and save it to make another one. Or if you've done completed both of your pieces of artwork on the 2 sheets you received and you don't want to keep any of it, you can just fold it all into the table covering and discard it. Now I'm going to select which of the 2 stencils that I want to use to outline on this painting. And you can try them both out, see which one speaks to you. You can use the same stencil on both your papers, or you can use one of each of them to make 2 separate, completely different ones. I currently have a love of smells, and this one really spoke to me. So I'm picking a color that's going to be a little bit contrast to some of the colors that are already on the painting itself. So I decided to make a lighter blue. I don't know what color you would call this blue, but it is one that I like, and it dries almost like a sea blue, maybe a little bit darker than that. Once you've mixed whichever color you'd like to make for your outline, you're just going to take your little sponge dabber, and you're just going to hold down your stencil on the page, and you are going to outline your stencil. Once you've finished outlining your stencil, you can either pick it up with a fingernail, or you can use your scraper tool to lift up an edge and pull it off. While the paint's still wet, I do like to scrape some words or symbols or hearts into the wet paint. Again, just gives it a little bit more texture when it dries, and it shows through and gives it a little bit more character and depth. And there we go. And you have your unique artwork that you can let it dry, you can frame it. You have another piece of paper in there, so you could do a second one with the same stencil and make yourself a little diptych, which is, two paintings that work together. And you could frame them, you can give them to somebody as a gift, or, just have enjoyed the experience of having made them. I hope you really enjoyed this process. Really feel that making art is something that we don't often have a good opportunity to engage in, especially those of us that might need it the most as a de-stress or relax. So I hope you enjoyed your experience and you got a little bit of zen while you were doing it. The whole point of this type of experience is to focus on the process and enjoy the journey versus the end product. That said, it is always nice to have an end product you like as well. So again, thank you for watching. Thank you for using the Artiszen kit, and if you enjoyed this, please share it with other people that you feel would benefit from doing something like this. You can subscribe to my channel from this video, see the link below, and you can also find us on Instagram at Scribbles and Hearts. So thanks again for watching, and I hope you get to incorporate a little bit of our practice into your regular life.